So, doing tech, doing vlogs, and now even wrestling reviews. I guess I'm doing it all here on the channel. But oh boy, why am I still watching this? I'm 26 and tonight I feel like I'm 50. Because I can't stand to watch this anymore. So anyways, welcome. This is my incomplete review of WrestleMania 32 because I didn't watch the entire show. In fact, I only probably watched like half of it and that was too much. So I know yesterday in the vlog I said, oh, I like wrestling, I watched it for years and that's the way I learn English. Yeah, I guess everything comes to an end and maybe it's the time that I need to stop watching wrestling because it's just getting worse, even if you think that that just can't be the case. So for those who haven't watched WrestleMania 32 yet and who still want to do this, I'm warning you, this video will be full of spoilers. So make sure to just exit this video if you don't want to hear anything about the results of WrestleMania. But I actually take this video as a favor to you guys so that you don't have to watch the show, because just don't. So we'll get started, and I actually have here a website open with all the matches that were at WrestleMania 32 because I'm sure that I would probably forget like half of them or even more. Starting off, the pre-show had the Usos versus the Dudleys, and I didn't watch it. So I like the Dudleys, but honestly I thought they would come back to fight for the championships, but the WWE Tag Team Championships weren't even on the line at WrestleMania, so there was not really a point in just watching them taking on the Usos in the pre-show. I mean, who cares, and it doesn't change anything, so whatever. Then I missed the 10 Diva Tag Team match, Total Divas versus Team Bad and Blonde. I'm not going to say anything more about that. I didn't watch it. Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal was actually not part of the pre-show, but it was later in the show, and the Battle Royale was okay. I mean, there were some surprise entries, like Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, what is he doing in a wrestling ring? But still was pretty entertaining, but the end was just so weird. Who wins the Battle Royale? Baron Corbin. I mean, yeah, there were a lot of NXT chants because he's from NXT and not from the main roster, but that's probably the only thing that he has going for him, because if you've watched NXT, that guy can't wrestle to save his life, and there's a reason why most of his matches were like 10 or 15 seconds long, because that meant he just had to do like 2 or 3 moves and that's basically all he can do. So why on earth is he winning the Battle Royale? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So whatever, moving on. Kalisto vs. Ryback, didn't watch that. Might have to go back and watch the match. I didn't even see when it was on, but I guess that could be a good match because Kalisto is quite talented, but whatever. And then the 7-man ladder match, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Dolph Ziggler, Zack Ryder, Sin Cara, The Miz and Stardust. That was probably my favorite match of the entire card. I didn't really expect that in the beginning, but then again, of course, ladder matches are always very promising, and this one didn't disappoint either. And certainly a match that I would recommend you go back to rewatch if you haven't watched it already, or to watch then, or rewatch if you've already watched it, because there were a couple of very, very nice moves, like the move from Sin Cara off the ladder, which was, I think, a crossbody onto a ladder that was set up outside of the ring, and somebody was on there, I think The Miz. He certainly deserved it, so that was good. The end, again, was so weird. The Miz was climbing up the ladder and from the back comes Zack Ryder and he just pushes him down, and Zack Ryder is the new Intercontinental Champion. I mean, what? Zack Ryder? I mean, he had like a nice YouTube show a couple of years ago, but that's basically it, so what the heck is he doing? And somebody like Sami Zayn, who has doing just like insane moves during the entire match, isn't winning it, but instead it's Zack Ryder, so what the heck? Just doesn't make any sense. Oh, and then AJ Styles versus Chris Jericho. Spoiler, I didn't watch the match. Why? Because I saw it already 3 times on Raw, on SmackDown, and it was like the next one was worse than the one before and was just horrible. I mean, I guess there are just certain types of wrestlers that can really work well together, and then there's some other wrestlers who can't. And I know that Jericho's just tagline is to say, I'm the best at whatever I do. Then just do me a favor and stop wrestling. I know you're legend, but it's just horrible. I mean, it's just boring to watch, and I honestly didn't want to bother with watching the match for the 4th time. I actually only saw the end, and it was very surprising that Chris Jericho actually went over, because I felt like AJ Styles on the big stage would get the win, but he didn't, so that was another bad aspect. I mean, Chris Jericho has put over Fandango at WrestleMania, but he doesn't put over AJ Styles. What's wrong with that? I mean, seriously? Fandango. Ugh. And then, the New Day versus League of Nations handicap match. I think it wasn't even a handicap match, at least not from what I saw. It looked like a 3-on-3 with just Wade Barrett on the outside, but I might be mistaken. I didn't really pay too much attention to that. And that was rightfully so, because the match itself was pretty boring, and the match itself also just didn't really have to do anything, or didn't do anything for the show. No, I actually skipped the match, but I saw a few parts of it. But in the end, the entire match was just a setup so that League of Nations, in the end, the entire match was just a setup anyways for the League of Nations to go over, so that then HBK, Cactus Jack, so Mick Foley, and also, of course, the legend himself, Steve Austin, were coming out, and they basically just beat up the League of Nations, and that was basically it. So there was no point in having the tag team champions here on the show, except of their big like Booty-O's cereal box that was like 10 meters high, and they were climbing out of that in silly costumes. That was the point of it, and just to set up the little fight between the Legends and League of Nations. Again, I mean, don't get me wrong, to see these Legends is great, but it stops being great if some of them can't even fully walk down to the ring, or at least it looks like they're in a lot of pain, and it just shows that they had a long career and that they sacrificed their bodies, and a lot of respect for that, but it's just not their time to be out there even for these kind of things. I mean, it wasn't a match for these improv fights, I guess. Then we move on to Brock Lesnar versus Dean Ambrose, and honestly, the match wasn't bad, but there was only one possible outcome, and that was that Brock Lesnar destroys Dean Ambrose. And they've tried so hard during the last couple of weeks to make Ambrose look even tougher than he ever looked before, and to give him these weapons and so on, but in the end, I don't know, at least to me it felt like it was all for nothing, and the build-up was more thought through and put more effort in than the actual match itself. I mean, honestly, Brock Lesnar is a beast, and to put him in the ring with somebody like Dean Ambrose, who hasn't even been on the main roster for too long time, just seems like a misfit, no matter how good Dean Ambrose is. So just from a character standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, Brock Lesnar ended the Undertaker's undefeated streak, and now he's supposed to lose against Dean Ambrose. Who believed that? Like nobody. So you knew how the outcome would be, and therefore I felt like it was a very boring match, because yeah, there were some near falls, but honestly I never felt like Brock Lesnar would lose. It just didn't make any sense. I mean, Brock Lesnar is at WrestleMania 32 in front of 100,000 people, and you put him against Dean Ambrose. Why don't you put him against The Rock? Why don't you put him, I don't know, against the Legend? Just so many missed opportunities. It's just sad. So then, of course, we also had Undertaker versus Shane McMahon, Hell in a Cell. And from the just build-up and stipulation, I always felt like this was a lose-lose situation. So no matter which way it would go, it's just a bad outcome that doesn't work for the fans. And that kind of is also what happened. To my surprise, Undertaker won. I mean, he already lost his streak and it was about who's gaining the control of Raw and blah blah blah. But with all the risks that Shane McMahon is taking, I mean, he just jumped off Hell in a Cell through the announce table and he still loses. I mean, he's doing everything. He's taking bigger risks than all the professional wrestlers on the roster. And Shane McMahon was in, I don't know, like a corporate function in China or Japan or whatever, a couple of years. So he's not a professionally trained wrestler and he's just taking risks and jumps that nobody else on the roster is taking. And now he's just losing and it doesn't make any sense. For me personally, I think that there might be a big surprise in store for Raw, maybe like today or next week, because WWE is a publicly traded company. So storyline wise, he could just buy all the shares or at least a majority of the shares to get into control of WWE. And it doesn't matter if he lost the match at WrestleMania or not. And therefore the Undertaker is still going to continue just wrestling at WrestleMania next year. And Shane McMahon gets the control of the company. So storyline wise, they probably still have a way to work around it. But I mean, he's coming back after like 8 years and he's jumping off Hell in a Cell and that was it? I don't think so. Just, it would be a big surprise. Now, before we get to the main event, I also quickly want to talk about The Rock's appearance. And, I mean, first off, The Rock is great and I love The Rock. He's amazing. But why is he just like playing around with a flamethrower 10 minutes? Just to light up the Rocky sign with fire. Didn't do anything for me, maybe you guys felt otherwise, but at least for me it didn't do anything. And then, of course, well, first off, I thought that he would leave after just announcing that they had like 100,000 just people in attendance. I was like, seriously, you bring out The Rock to just announce the attendance? But then, of course, the Wyatt family came out. And honestly, I mean, there was a time when when the Wyatt family symbolized something dangerous, that they could destroy everybody. But now I think like last week at Raw, or maybe 2 weeks ago, Roman Reigns took out the entire Wyatt family. And now The Rock shouldn't be able to do the same thing. Doesn't make any sense, right? So yeah, I thought, well, at least he's gonna beat up the Wyatt family. Yeah, until John Cena came out. So I already hated this WrestleMania and I was like, yes, at least John Cena didn't come out during the Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker and Shane McMahon. But of course he had to come out later to be the hero and to save The Rock. And they were hugging each other and now, yeah, you get what I mean. I mean, I hate John Cena as a character. He's just superhero and he's so injured, but he's still coming out and he's beating up everybody, and the fireman's carry is such a painful maneuver, and yeah, so exciting. So yeah, The Rock was there, but even that was, at least for me, not exciting at all. So last but not least, Triple H versus Roman Reigns. So I just got done watching the match and I was like yawning all the time. I was so close to falling asleep. It was a slow match, typically like a Triple H match. And first of all, it seemed like they put all their effort into just the entrance of Triple H and that was basically it. But then, I mean, it was again pretty obvious that Roman Reigns would win because Shane McMahon had already lost and now you believe that also again Roman Reigns is losing. That just doesn't make any sense. So they wanted to send the fans off with a good vibe that Roman Reigns defeated the odds and beat the authority and now everything is great and flowers and sun and the only problem is they've tried to get Roman Reigns over for like 2 years now and not even at WrestleMania it works. Not even with a broken nose. Not even with all the assaults, and the Roman Empire is just, or Roman Reigns is just John Cena 2.0. And I'm honestly out of excuses for why I'm watching wrestling. I can't even explain it to myself. I feel like this was the biggest waste of time when watching a show. I could have watched like 2 good movies in that time. I could have watched like 8 episodes of House of Cards, even though House of Cards isn't even my favorite show. I could have worked. I could have done so many things that were much better than watching this. I think I'll give wrestling one more chance, or at least WWE, I should say. And that's tonight's Raw. Because tonight's Raw, the Raw after WrestleMania, oftentimes is much better than WrestleMania itself because it's significantly shorter and there are a lot of times just big returns. So I'm praying for that there will be a big return that will just pave the way to SummerSlam or something. But if it's going to continue like it did just at WrestleMania, then I guess I'm done with wrestling. Yeah, so probably kind of pointless video, but I had to get this out. There was actually one time when I thought about just doing wrestling reviews here on YouTube, just like all the time. And I'm glad that I didn't, because yeah, it would piss me off too much. So anyways, thanks for watching, see you next time.